Teacher laughs at twin sisters Black, who says her mother works at NASA, until she enters school. The school was celebrating. Balloons on the doors, colorful posters with phrases about the future, and in the center of the courtyard, an improvised stage with a shy microphone that amplified dreams. It was the long-awaited Professions Week. Ayla and Luma had been anxious since Sunday. They had carefully chosen the matching dresses, printed with small planets and stars, a gift from their mother. They couldn't wait to tell the world what almost no one believed. Our mother works at NASA. But how many times is a truth rejected just because it comes from where you least expect it? When it was their turn, the two walked to the front of the room with small but firm steps, a little shy but full of pride. The other children whispered. Professor Diana crossed her arms, already with an expression of disdain. Ayla began to speak, her voice trembling with excitement. Our mother is an aerospace engineer. She's helping to build NASA's new telescope, which will look beyond the visible stars. The silence of the room lasted 3 seconds. And then came the sound that broke their hearts. Laughter. Professor Diana was the first to laugh. Then he pointed to them and said, Girls, this is impossible. You can come up with something more realistic next time, okay? It's not because it's the week of professions that anything goes. Have you ever seen hope wither on a child's face? Ayla shook her sister's hand. Luma swallowed her tears, but her eyes were already shining with pain. They tried to say something, to show the truth, but the truth is sometimes silenced before it is even born. The class laughed, and no one stood up to defend them. Now tell me, how many true stories have been treated as lies, just because the one who tells doesn't have the right face? How many dreams have been trampled on by voices that confuse authority with arrogance? The twins left the room crying, while at the bottom of the blackboard was still written, Profession of Dreams. Ironic, isn't it? But what no one knew was that their dream was not just true. It was bigger than everyone there could imagine. What if I told you that the woman everyone laughed at, was he about to walk in the front door? The next day, Ayla and Luma returned to school in silence. They slept little, and it wasn't for lack of sleep. It was overthinking. The humiliation still hurt, but there was something that hurt more. The doubt they planted in the image of their mother. So, the girls decided they would try it, not with words, but with deeds. They put her mother's blue briefcase inside her backpack, where she kept the most important certificates. They separated a special photo. Lorraine in a lab coat in front of a huge metal structure and solar panels, the prototype of the telescope under construction, and they went to school with tight chests, but the look full of hope. Would they believe it now? During the break, they approached the coordinator. His hands trembled, but his voice was decisive. This is the photo of our mother in the laboratory. And that's her certificate, NASA's. The coordinator barely looked. He took the paper, squinted his eyes as if he could see but did not want to see, and he uttered the phrase that would burn forever in the girl's memory. This is montage. Photoshop. Children are very creative. Creative? Creative is what they say when a child draws a dragon in their notebook. But when she shows the truth and is called a liar, the name of this is erasure. Can you imagine how someone feels who tries to defend the one they love and yet is ridiculed? Ayla tried to argue. Luma pointed to the certificate's digital signature, but nothing helped. It was as if they had erected an invisible wall between them and any chance of justice. And the worst came later, when his colleagues began to repeat what they heard. It's all lies. Nobody from the hood works at NASA. They must have downloaded this from the internet. Words flew like stones. The school corridor has become a court without a judge, without defense, without truce. And you, have you ever been through something like this? Have you ever had to prove who you are? Why has someone decided that you can't be all that? But what no one noticed, it's just that while they laughed, judged, and mocked, fate was already writing the next chapter. And this time it would be on stage, with microphone, and with the truth that no one could deny anymore. What would you do if everyone doubted your truth? But an unexpected opportunity arose. in silence without warning. No audience. That's exactly what happened to Lorraine M. Hayes, Ayla and Luma's mother. While her daughters faced crooked looks, sarcastic smiles, and a system that insists on doubting excellence when she has a black face. On the other side of the city, something completely different was happening. Lorraine had been invited by a special commission of the City Hall to open the city's Science and Technology Week, an important event, with live broadcast, auditorium full, journalists, and the most curious detail. The school where the event would take place. It was the same school that had called her daughters liars. Fate? Justice? Cosmic coincidence? Maybe all together. But there is one more detail. The organization of the event, made up of scientists, educators, and cultural managers, decided to keep the name of the main guest in absolute secrecy. They wanted to make an impact. An element of surprise, something that would inspire students without prior prejudice. Lorraine, always discreet, just smiled and accepted. He didn't comment anything to anyone. Not with Ayla, not with Luma, perhaps because he knew deep down that the truth does not need to be shouted. It just needs a real chance to be heard. Meanwhile, at school, no one imagined what was to come. The teacher continued with her classes. The coordinator continued to treat the girls as a footnote. And Ayla and Luma, without knowing anything, were already thinking about asking their mother to change schools. But what if the stage that humiliated them so much became the same place where the truth would gain a microphone? What if those who were called liars were now presented as a world reference? Have you ever thought about the power that has a revelation made in the right place, at the right time? Get ready, because what this school would witness, no one was ready to see it. The morning started like any other. The schoolyard was busy, teachers arranging chairs, curious students asking who would be the special guest. Some even bet, it must be someone from the university. It's going to be a famous scientist from TV. But Ayla and Luma, they weren't excited. Sitting at the back of the auditorium with their heads down, the two hoped that the event would pass quickly. It still hurt to remember the laughter, the jokes. It was still difficult to look at Professor Diana, who was talking to other colleagues as if nothing had happened. Nobody knew. Not even them. But that morning was about to change everything. Lights went out. The school principal took the stage with the microphone in hand. A respectful silence took over the room. He cleared his throat, smiled at the audience, and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pride that we begin our Science and Technology Week. And to open the event, we are honored to welcome a guest who is changing the world with her work. Aerospace engineer, specialist in precision optics, responsible for part of NASA's new space telescope. With you, Dr. Lorraine M. Hayes." The weather stopped. First, a buzz of surprise, then absolute silence, as if the air had been sucked out of the place, and then, suddenly, all eyes turned to the door of the auditorium. She went in, with a white coat, firm steps, serene look, and a presence that filled the space more than any slideshow. But the eyes that shone the most were at the back of the room. Ayla and Luma looked at each other, the heart racing, the mouth half open. It was their mother. There, on stage, in front of all those who doubted. Professor Diana froze. The coordinator turned pale. Some students swallowed. Who could have imagined? The woman who was called an invention. Now it was the main attraction. And if you think the story ends there, he is wrong. Because Lorraine didn't just come to talk about science. She came to teach something that no workbook has the courage to address. Lorraine took the stage and didn't look at the adults first. His eyes searched for only two people in that crowd, Ayla and Luma, found. And he smiled. A silent smile, but so full of meaning that it seemed to hug them from right there, from the stage. The girls were static, still trying to understand if it was a dream, or if the universe was finally correcting an injustice. She adjusted the microphone. The room, packed, was mute, a different silence, not of contempt, but of attention. Now everyone wanted to hear what this woman had to say. And Lorraine began. He talked about the telescope, about the concave mirrors, the calibrated lenses, the hours of calculation and adjustment so that a beam of light traveled billions of years until it was detected. He showed images, data, spoke of stars that died even before the Earth existed. But then, when everyone was waiting for her to say goodbye, Lorraine took a deep breath, and he said, "Now, if you will allow me, I wanted to talk about the most important part of my career, which is not on any chart, nor in any manual." She asked Ayla and Luma to go on stage with her. The girls walked, among their classmates, now silent, almost embarrassed, and stood next to their mother. Lorraine held her hands and looked at the audience. "These are my daughters. And yesterday, they were called liars for saying that their mother works at NASA." Some moved uncomfortably in their chairs. Others lowered their eyes. Professor Diana pursed her lips, pretending to look at the clock. Lorraine continued, "And you know what's most ironic? Even I, within NASA, have been discredited. Because she is a woman, for being black. Because he didn't have the accent or last name they expected. They said, 'Are you sure you're in the right place?' She paused. The truth is that we have been asked this for centuries. But today, I return the question, are you sure you are listening to the right people?" Silence, the tension was almost palpable. And then, in an elegant gesture, Lorraine turned to Professor Diana and, without hostility, just firmly said, "Teacher, as an educator, you have the most beautiful mission in the world to teach. But teaching is also recognizing when you make mistakes. I would like you to end this talk with me, on stage." The room held its breath. Diana hesitated. He walked slowly. Rose. He looked at Lorraine, then for the girls. Not a word. But there, in front of everyone, the embarrassment was transformed into something greater. Recognition. Can you imagine the power of seeing the person who doubted you, applauding your truth? Now the question was no longer whether Ayla and Luma were lying. The question was, why did it take them so long to listen? And when Lorraine came down from the stage, their world was already different. The video of the lecture went viral in less than 24 hours. Someone from the audience had discreetly recorded it. When Lorraine said, "Are you sure you're listening to the right people?" that excerpt exploded on the internet. Shares, likes, comments from all corners. Ayla and Luma, who had previously walked with their heads down the halls, could now barely get to the room without being stopped by other students. "I saw the video! Your mother is amazing. I'm sorry I didn't believe you." Parents started calling. Teachers from other schools sent messages of support. Activists shared the story as an example of veiled racism being debunked with class and truth. The girls went from the ones who invented to the ones who opened the eyes of the country. And then Lorraine did something even bigger. She met with the school board and representatives of the city hall. Not to apologize, not to punish anyone, but to propose. She wanted to create there, in that school that failed her daughters, a transformative project. The Initial Stars Project was born there, a science club with direct support from NASA professionals, aimed especially at Black and peripheral girls. A space where dreams would not be silenced, where curiosity would not be treated as insolence, where truth would not depend on surname or zip code. Can you imagine that? A space where the Ayla and Luma of the future will not need to prove that their mothers exist, where they will not have to pick up certificates to be heard, where the sky won't be a limit, but an invitation. The coordinator, previously skeptical, now gave a standing ovation. Professor Diana? Silent, yes, but present in all project meetings. For the first time, she listened. And you know what's more powerful? It's just that what started with a humiliation, now it was inspiration. Because when a child is heard, he does not grow up only for himself. It grows into a world that desperately needs new stars. And Ayla and Luma were just beginning to shine. 3. Months passed. What was once just an empty room at the end of the corridor has become a laboratory, with posters of nebulae on the walls, shelves with robotics parts, boxes with lenses, batteries, motors, tubes, and books donated by universities. The Early Stars project now had life, and at the center of it all, there they were, Ayla and Luma. They were no longer seen as the girls of lies. Now they were leaders, voices. A reference for 20 other girls who also learned there that they don't need to ask permission to dream big. The club's first challenge? Create an innovative project for a state science fair. While some groups tried to reproduce rockets with PET bottles, Ayla and Luma proposed something different, something with real impact. They looked up at the sky, but they decided to give something back to Earth. What if we created low-cost telescopes for public schools, with radiation sensors and accessible reading data, suggested Ayla, with a twinkle in her eye. The project was named Light in Schools. With the guidance of NASA's partner scientists, the group developed a functional, simple model with accessible materials and the possibility of replication anywhere in the country. On the day of the presentation, their booth was the most visited. A telescope made with recycled aluminum, lenses repurposed from old cameras, and a simple board that transmitted data in real time to a tablet. Everything working, all explained by the voices of black girls. Safe, sharp, shiny. The judges were impressed, and at the end of the event came the announcement. First place in the Scientific Social Innovation category. The cameras turned to them, but Ayla and Luma didn't just smile for the trophy. They smiled because, at that moment, everyone saw what they had always known. It wasn't just about rockets. It was about visibility. It was about occupying the space that had always belonged to them. And in the middle of the celebration, a reporter asked, "What do you feel now, girls?" Luma replied, looking up at the sky as if she knew where she came from. "We just wanted them to stop thinking we were making it up. Now, we're showing it. But if you think the cycle is over, just wait until you see what the teacher would do." After that, the fair was over. The courtyard was already empty. Only the last rays of sunlight streaming through the windows and the soft echo of the applause that still seemed to vibrate in the corridors remained. Ayla and Luma carefully organized their materials, putting back the lenses and cables in the ice box as if they were keeping a piece of their own heart. That's when they heard footsteps. Slowly, a little hesitant. It was her, Professor Diana, for the first time. Alone, without the rigid posture, without the cutting voice, with only a book in my hands, and a look that mixed embarrassment and something new. Something like respect. She stopped in front of the girls, took a deep breath, and in a thin voice said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" The two nodded, curious. The teacher held the book tighter, as if it were more than paper and cover, as if carrying a story. My grandmother, what her name was Eloa. She was the daughter of farmers, negress, and he dreamed of studying astronomy. She said she wanted to understand heaven because it was the only place where no one was in charge of her, but they never let them. They said it was no place for her. She swallowed. When I saw you on stage, I remembered her, of what she could have been if she had had the chance, and I was a broken bridge. Instead of making way, I closed it. Out of fear, out of repetition, out of ignorance. Diana held out the book to Ayla. It was an old science encyclopedia with its cover worn out by time. On the first page, a handwritten dedication, "So that no more stars are denied." Eloa, 1972, Luma touched the sheet gently. Ayla smiled, her eyes watering, and he said softly, almost like a promise, "Now no one will say that we invented it." At that moment, there was no stage, no applause, no awards. Just 3 generations of black women, connected by an invisible thread of resistance, memory, and reparation. Because sometimes, a star does not die. She just waits for the right moment to be seen. How many truths have been silenced because they came out of the wrong mouth? How many geniuses have been discarded? Why did the Ayla Luma, Lorraine, and even Iloa, the grandmother who dreamed of stars. They all carried the same message. The fight is not just for recognition, it's for space, by existence, for dignity. Because the world doesn't need more certainty. It needs more people with the courage to listen. And if you think this story is only theirs, think again. It's about me. About you, about all the children who will still be called liars just because they dared to shine before their time. But now, perhaps the time has come. If this story touched you, share, not out of pity, but out of justice. Show it to someone who doubted you. Tag a teacher, send it to a mother, inspire a daughter, and in the comments, write, "The truth also lives in me." Let's make this echo reach where silence has been imposed for too long. Because when the voice is real, no one can deny it.